Good morning, Morgan. Today is Monday, March 15th, 2032.
I remember being on a plane with Raph. We were coming back from a trip out to Rockville, and he had sketched out some of the whole opening section when Morgan goes to his first day at work.
It started with a pitch from Raph, because he very much had in mind that he wanted the opening of the game, and for this theme to echo throughout, he wanted the opening of the game to have a pulling the rug out from under the player kind of a moment, right?
The opening level of Arkane's 2007 game Prey is among the most fascinating in modern memory, and in many ways it has the opposite design philosophy of the rest of the game. Prey is known for its player choice, deep interconnected systems, and clear communication with the player. But this opening level is guided, linear, and lying to the player at almost every turn. In this video, we're going to focus on the design of the opening level of Prey, how the team brought the original vision penned by creative director Rafael Colantonio to reality. But there's a reason why we're doing this as its own video. The opening 30 minutes of Prey contain a bunch of wonderful moments that we really don't want to spoil while talking about the rest of the game. So, word of warning, if you're interested in playing Prey at all, just give this a thumbs up, hit subscribe, and come back for the next video. We promise it'll be worth it. Okay, if you're still here, then through the looking glass we go.
Today is Monday, March 15th,
2032.
The opening level of Prey works like this. You wake up in a beautiful apartment and get a call from your brother that it's time for your first day at work. You get dressed, leave the apartment, and jump on an elevator to the roof. Here you take a helicopter ride across the city to a different building, enjoying some music from Mick Gordon and some spectacular views, including these rather interesting in-world title cards. You land, meet your brother for a quick chat, and are quickly ushered into a set of tests. These tests are the first sign that things are a little bit odd, as the scientists are asking you to do some pretty rudimentary tasks, but are confused by whatever solution you come up with. In the final testing room, you sit down at a terminal and complete a series of morality tests known as the trolley problem. And before you finish, one of the scientist's cup turns into an alien, a bunch of knockout gas fills the room, and you wake up back on the same day that this all began. Only this time there's a dead lady in the hall, and I'm pretty sure that wall wasn't there either. So, what happened that first day, and what's to come next? Well, this is where the spoilers come in. At the start of Prey, you are essentially a lab rat, living the same day over and over as part of a test. Your apartment is fake, the helicopter ride is fake, the tests are taking place in an actual lab, and all of this is happening on a space station. The entire level takes place in 3 areas that loop back around: the apartment, the helicopter pad, and the testing area. All of these connected via hidden doors and gantries. And perhaps what's most interesting is that many of the rooms you walk through are just reconfigurations of rooms you've already been in. The 2 rooftops are the same. The rooms on either sides of these elevator rides are the same too. This entire ruse all in service of not only giving the player an exciting start to the game, but setting the stage for a world where you're never quite sure if you can trust your own perspective.
The level design and the writing part of it was super challenging because it needed to do this narrative thing, but also it needed to tutorialize the play, which is always a pain in the ass, but you kind of have to, you got to introduce players to the game and the concepts of the game, but not be overwhelming. So it needed to do a bunch of narrative work, it needed to do this dramatic reveal thing, and it needed to tutorialize some things for the player too, like this is a mimic, this is how a mimic works, So there were a lot of early gray boxes working, with some of our artists, just like with the flow of how the player moved through the space, and even technically, how we could do the looking glass technology, the mirror technology that looks like there's a 3D space on the other side of it, and just where those 3D assets or even how they're organized in the level editor was challenging, because you're traversing the same space multiple times, but under different circumstances and different arrangements of the geometry are visible at different times.
The weird thing about the way that the opening sequence of Prey works is that all the sections where you see where the walls are sliding into place and everything, that was actually how it was all done in the engine. It worked out really cool that it looks neat for the player, but it actually was pieces sliding into place and other things switching out because you were truly in the same space overlaid on top of each other as you were playing that.
You know, if you look at the floor on the hallway outside your room, you can see like drag marks where like the walls like rotate and shift and things like that. In the lore of the game, in order for them to repeat the experiments, their reasoning, which of course is our reasoning, but like their reasoning was we need to recreate that day the same way each time, right? And so everybody was like, positions, everyone, right? You know, here comes Morgan for test number 73 or whatever.
Elevators in video games are usually fake. They're either transporting you somewhere or loading and unloading assets while the doors are closed. But in Prey, the levels outside were actually morphing while you couldn't see them. We see these elements later when you escape and find two worlds overlapping. Both the hall outside your room and the hall to the helicopter pad are actually the same room. For instance, here you can see where the number has been hidden behind a panel. And here's one of my favorite elements. These rub marks on the floor are in both configurations, presumably leather marks from the soles of your shoes when you were dragged back to bed. The helicopter ride is fake too. The skyboxes of this world are using a technology called Looking Glass, an overt reference to Looking Glass Studios, creators of Thief and System Shock. This technology effectively works like an augmented reality matrix of screens, which change the images on the glass depending on the position of the subject's eye line, thus creating the impression of 3D space. So not only are both rooftops actually the same rooftop, the ride itself is done using a set of hydraulics, and the interior glass of the helicopter is also not real glass, but another layer of looking glass. At least in the game world. This is the one spot in the level where the game doesn't operate exactly as it's shown on the soundstage. In the engine, the helicopter does actually take off here, and this led to an interesting bug that actually shipped in the game.
Was the purpose of the helicopter to sort of emphasize how ridiculous this ruse was?
Yes.
Okay.
We wanted to like, if we're selling this lie, let's lie big. You know what I mean? Like, surely, you know, if I was in a helicopter flying to another building in the city, then it's real, and in fact it's not, right? That was part of the push for it. One of the initial, I think the very first pitch, when Raph had it just like in a PowerPoint, was a car. It was like a car, and you went downstairs instead of the roof, and you got in a car, and the car had the fake looking glass, and you know, it was like a fake simulated ride or whatever. But at one point we realized we could do, even it sounds like it would be more complicated, but it turned out that like we could do a helicopter and it would be more dramatic. It wouldn't be any more work.
That might be the only time that we have the player moving through the world when looking glass is involved. And it's actually a fun story because there's one little moment where the camera passes through the looking glass. The helicopter itself actually has the equivalent of looking glass on all of its windows, so that, you know, we can show you the fake scene while you're still in the helicopter. But there is a moment where you physically pass through the looking glass that's in that open space above the helicopter pad, and you get this little tiny glitch for one frame. And you might get it, you might not. It just depends on whether or not the camera hits that on any particular playthrough. And there was some great comments in the forums and stuff after we launched where people were talking about that as a tell. That you know, they thought it was like a fictional thing that was built in that was supposed to be a tell that you were in a simulation. And it was I loved how the players handled that.
And so we make our way to the third and final area of this level, the test rooms. These 4 rooms loop back around to the apartment and look and operate essentially as you'd expect on a space station. The objective here, to plant the seed of an idea that will reveal itself later in the game, that these simple tests weren't testing your physical skills, but rather special abilities you just didn't know about yet.
Originally, the tests were supposed to be kind of a parkour test. They were a little more physical oriented, and that sort of shifted over time.
We wanted to tutorialize some things about the game, but then also point to like they're having you do these ridiculously simple things, like I don't understand, you know, what's going on here. But then also have this layer of like, you've done this before, like later after the fact realizing I've done this before and I did it with powers before, you know, so it had to later you could look at it and go, if I had had the mimic power, this is what would have happened. If I had had this power, this is what would have happened.
I can imagine a version of those where you're asking the player to do something in a tutorial setting,
yeah,
and they're doing it wrong, and it's just annoying to the player, or like frustrating,
Yeah.
or am I breaking this game?
Yeah.
So how did you like strike that?
Lots of play testing.
Right.
Yeah, like we had our initial idea, and of course, like the first 90 versions were terrible. And part of it is, you know, the actor, Dr. Bellamy, that's the actor who plays Garrett in Thief. But part of that is him making it fun, you know? He's kind of goofy and he's fun to listen to, having the right dialogue in place so that like the player could be in on the joke, you know what I mean? So like you hear them saying things like, does he not realize we can see him? You know, he's doing that again, blah, blah. So then the player clues in like, okay, I know they're asking me to do something dumb, so this isn't exactly like a tutorial in a game.
Hide behind a chair might be the funniest thing I've done in a video game forever.
Look, is she? She's hiding behind the chair.
The critical moment is almost here, the big reveal that will set the tone for the rest of the game. But for Arkane, it was important that this wasn't something that was just shown to the player, but instead something they revealed themselves. But this was pretty tricky. How do you tell somebody to escape if they don't even know they're in a cage?
Good morning, Morgan. Today is Monday, March 15th, 2032.
The other challenging bit was like when you wake back up the next day, like getting players to like smash the glass. I mean, games are so tricky in that way where like, you know, you enter into the world and assume a set of rules or the way the world works. And so you have to be careful with how you can subconsciously like condition the player about how the world works. And so sometimes you find yourself asking them to do something that is against the way that you've conditioned them. And so, you know, you gotta figure out a way to overcome that. You know, because like if you believe I'm playing a game that is not very interactive and that is unbreakable glass, then trying to get players to smack the glass with something is almost insurmountable, right? Because they're like, but that's not how this world works, you know? And so we're like, no, but that's how this world does work, you know?
It's really hard to test that sequence once you know the secret, right? I know that design was trying to thread the needle with not giving it away, but also like making it obvious what you need to do, right? And I remember when we had, and anytime we hired somebody new, they had to play that sequence, and that would be the design's chance to like QA that sequence. And so we had a QA tester one time doing it, and we streamed him playing it into this area over here, and we were watching him play, and we're like, oh, just hit the glass with the wrench, you know, because we hadn't, you know, gotten it nailed down yet. It wasn't quite right.
The elevator, for instance, it's not even there, like you've walled it off.
Yeah.
Was that an intentional way of?
Yeah, so part of it was like using other little set pieces around the apartment to show like the environment is fake. This is not real. So hopefully you'll start to, you know, challenge other things like clicking on the TV, clicking on the shower, like messing with the, you know, the window. And like, and I don't even know if it was a wrench, honestly, initially, but just like glass, wrench, come on player, glass, wrench, you know, smash it. And then sometimes the collision on the framing of the glass was wrong at one point. It was a little too fat. And so sometimes players would get it right, but they hit the metal in between the glass, dang. And they would go, oh, I guess that didn't work. And then we're like, everyone watching is like, no, God dang it, you had it right, but like you hit the wrong part of the glass. So, you know, there's like all these little things we had to do to like make that as smooth as possible for people. Like, you know, like kind of grease the wheels, you know.
You could also smash the
aquarium.
Yeah.
Yeah. And some people did that, which was cool because it's like a different experience, but not as dramatic as the other reveal. But some players did that, yeah.
Was that there in case people just had written off the idea
Yep.
of smashing the glass?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that why you put such beautiful, colorful fish in it?
Yep.
Because people
just like, look at this then, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Just making sure that the alternate paths were still there. So like if you hit the fish tank, for example, you could still go through that sequence and maybe not have the really spectacular reveal. Arkane's big into allowing the player like alternate ways to experience that story.
Again, it's the like what you've been conditioned to accept about the rules. Like I think some people probably like in the apartment and they're like, there's no way that this game is gonna let me smash the glass and go out into that city. But there's no way they built that entire city. But on the other hand, the aquarium is like, I'm gonna break the rules, I'm gonna smash the glass and see what happens, you know what I mean? So.
Worst case scenario, you got a cool
Yeah.
animation.
Yeah, it's just like smashing bottles and glasses, you know,
Right.
in a bar in a game or something like that. So
There were objects you could pick up on the first iteration of the day that you could probably throw at the glass,
yeah.
but there's no way of breaking it then?
Well, initially there was, but that created all these loopholes and weird problems, and so we had to make it so that like only the wrench can break it, you know, or lock down the number of things that you could actually throw at the glass, so that you wouldn't think this should break the glass, and why magically is the wrench the only thing that it does, you know.
Did you run into problems where people had thrown stuff at the glass earlier and they never thought to hit it?
Absolutely. Yeah, so that was part of the challenge too, is right, make sure that as much as possible, you know, the things that you could throw at the glass, there's no cinder blocks or hammers or weights or anything like that, you know. Because if the wrench can break the glass, then that should too. So it's like controllers and pizza boxes, and, you know. We even, thankfully we didn't have to do it in the end, but we even had dialogue lines that were like, "Morgan, smash the glass," you know.
In canon, in world,
Yeah.
the looking glass technology, if there's a second person in the room,
Wouldn't work.
It wouldn't work?
No.
Okay.
Or the second person would see something different, you know.
Right.
Because the way that it's rendering what it thinks, the cameras behind the glass are rendering what it thinks you should see.
From your iPhone.
From your, yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So it give the other person motion sickness, probably.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. And I can't remember who did it exactly, but I remember some people on Reddit like even prototype real world versions of it using Wiimotes. Like that, I think some guy had like a headset with Wiimotes on his head, and then the screen would show him what he needed to see based on it. It's super cool. Fans do the craziest shit with the stuff from our games, and I freaking love it.
Mr. Yu, please make yourself comfortable and we'll be on our way. TranStar facility is just a short hop. 78 degrees, clear skies all the way. That's a nice view on the bay there. Here we are, Mr. Yu. Mind the glass on the way out. Good luck to you.